Hello, welcome to the Give Life Meaning podcast. I am your host, Yolanda Munoz. I had a time in my life where I said there has to be more to life than this. And now I've created this podcast where we will discuss topics that will bring awareness to real life situations to empower you, equip you, and give your life meaning. Hello, world changers. My name is Yolanda Munoz. Thank you so much for joining me this week for the Give Life Meaning podcast. Real quick, I want to say thank you to everyone that tuned in last week and that has reached out to me just to share something of that episode. I really appreciate you taking the time to reach out, and even for those that shared their story with me for the very first time, I don't take it lightly. And I really appreciate your time and reaching out. So thank you again. So for this week's episode, it's called From Reliving to Reliving, as in living again. Last week I spoke about toxic cycles. So this week I want to continue the conversation with something a little too familiar for many of us, the toxic cycle of reliving our past. And oftentimes we don't realize that we're stuck there. And it's almost nauseating to think of how toxic it can be to be in that place, right? And a lot of it is mentally, really, right? Which is something that I didn't even realize or even come to the awareness of how it's really a battle in the mind that we're dealing with when we're stuck on the past. And I remember I would have people that would point it out to me, but they weren't able to help me with that. And so for me, that was very frustrating in my life to know that obviously I was stuck in a cycle of, the past, but not receiving the help that I needed. I didn't really know how to receive that help with moving forward. Thankfully, when I came to know God, I was able to call out to him and ask him, well, Lord, you created me, and your word says, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. That was something I reflected on the fact that he mentions that. And so I'm like, well, I want to catch up to who I'm supposed to be, like who you created me to be right now. I don't want to be stuck in this vicious cycle because it didn't feel good. Sometimes I would reflect on, a really good relationship that I had that I turned away from. And I thought that was the best thing that could have ever happened to me, not realizing that I was actually stopping myself from receiving something new for my future. So this is why I'm very passionate about talking about things that we don't really normally talk about, but needs to be said because, it becomes a toxic cycle that we can get stuck in. And it doesn't always have to be about something negative, right? Because sometimes we can even be stuck on the fact that we made accomplishments, but then we don't move forward from that and do more because we're just validating ourselves probably from that accomplishment. And then we pretty much stay stagnant at that. Like we don't do anything else. So that's part of the reason why I really wanted to touch on this. A lot of the times, a lot of what we deal with leaves us in a place of feeling regret or shame and pain and a lot more, of course, but I only wanted to just kind of talk a little bit about it because, this is something that I could probably talk about forever. And I'm not going to leave you here to listen to me for hours. But I'm going to get into it because I realize that a lot of the times things get sugar-coated so that no one gets offended. But the truth is that, there are things that we need to be exposed because, at least we can reflect and then take action, right? And even for me personally, I appreciate when people call things out so that I can better myself and just move forward instead of, thinking that my way is the way and it's not helping me, right? So I really appreciate when people do call things out. And so, a lot of things that we get stuck on are like the traumatic experiences that we deal with or the breakups that we had. And like I mentioned, being in a bad relationship or even being in a great relationship that you think that that was like the best thing in the world and nothing else can top that off. So then we're really like blocking our blessings without realizing it. Sometimes it could be, the loss of a loved one and the grief, not to make this into a sad thing, but a friend of mine that we had dated in the past, but we were young, and he wanted to start a life with me and my child. And so the day that he was supposed to meet with me so that we can talk about our future, he ended up being murdered. And that was very painful for me. And I remember thinking to myself, like, wow, if only I would have called him, because he was supposed to call me. I did find it weird that he didn't call me because he is a man of his word. And when I didn't receive the call, I found it weird. But, I was also young. So I was like, oh, well, maybe he's busy. Maybe he's just having fun. I'm not going to bother him. And then the truth was that he had been murdered. And my thought was, I wish I should have called him. And I was really stuck on that, the fact that I didn't call him, and that maybe if I would have called him, that could have been avoided. And I had to learn how to process that and understand that it wasn't my fault. But that was something that I had dealt with, being in my mind, I'm battling with that. So oftentimes it's the people we hang out with that can't let go of our past and possibly even the mistakes that we've made in the past. And this is something I had to learn, that I had to create boundaries with people, because, when they would see me, they would either talk about that ex that was wonderful or talk about my past mistakes, that I'm no longer that person anymore. So please let it go. Please stop talking about what had happened before, because I'm not there anymore. Please stop talking about that toxic relationship that I was in, because I'm no longer with that person. And I learned to forgive and I learned to move on. So sometimes we have to create those boundaries with people around us so that we're not reliving the past, because sometimes that's really just the problem, the circle that we have, which is a topic for another day. That was something that I realized, and so I had to do. And also, whether we realize it or not, we have choices in life. If we don't make decisions, we're already making a decision. So we have to choose to move forward. I had to learn to make a decision. I wanted something new out of life. And I had to come to a point of reflecting. I had to come to a point of realization. I had to also even realize that God is doing something new every day, all the time. God is doing something new. Why am I holding on to something when God is trying to do something new in my life? And I want to tap into that, because my goal and my mission is to go to God empty-handed. But I can't go to God empty-handed if I'm just holding on instead of releasing. So I went to God because, as I mentioned, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. God, you know me, and you know my future. I don't know my future, but I know who holds my future. And so I know who God is. I trust in God. And I believe that whatever plan God has for me, that it will manifest. It will come to pass. But I need to be put in the right position to be able to receive that from Him. And so I had to go to Him and tell Him, okay, I'm holding on to this. Help me to release it. And so He brought me to people. He brought people in my life that helped me go through a process of healing when it was needed, or also a place to create boundaries that was needed that I didn't realize. Sometimes I'm going to have to hurt some people's feelings, and that's okay. That's not my problem if I'm hurting somebody else's feelings, unintentionally, of course. But they just have to understand that this is my life. And, if I don't want to talk about something that I've been through or about a relationship that I was in the past, then they should respect the fact that I need that space. And also, there were times that I had to write letters to people and just release everything that was in me, Maybe it was a letter to ask the person for forgiveness, because the best thing for me to do at the time was to write the letter versus meeting that person face to face, because it probably would have been foolish at the time to meet the people face to face to ask for forgiveness. And so for me, it really helped to just write the letter, like a letter of closure, and then just get rid of it. I ripped it up, threw it out, and that helped me. I had to understand for myself why certain things were coming up. What was it that was bringing back that memory? And what I realized too, even, was that I had to do a little cleaning up in my house. I had to get rid of some pictures. I had to get rid of some gifts that I received, and some clothing items that I had, because I didn't realize that when I would see that, it would literally bring back memories, and memories that I wanted to let go of so that I can move forward with my life. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It's our life, and we have the power to create something new with our life. We have the power to move forward in life. We don't have to be stuck. But if we don't know any better, we're not going to do any better. And so that's why I wanted to create this episode, so that it could bring an awareness and hopefully help somebody out that's listening. Because again, for me, I had a really great relationship with a man, and I had to learn that that's not the only best thing that's ever going to happen to me. Like, God can bring a really great husband to me, and I can do life with this person, and however that looks like. But if I'm holding on to how my ex was such a wonderful person, I'm not allowing God to move in my life and bring me what else he has for me. I also realized too of the fact that I had to be delivered, because there are ungodly soul ties that I had with people of my past. And I had to go ahead and get healing and deliverance from those ungodly soul ties. Because just because a person is good doesn't mean it's from God. And that's really what it comes down to. I know and understand now in my life what I want out of life. And I know exactly how I want it, and I know what it looks like, because I have the vision for it. I also had to understand of breaking off and renouncing inner vows that I had created from these past situations, that I didn't realize the power that those vows that I had created unknowingly, ignorantly, how it impacted me in my future. So I had to learn to renounce certain vows that I had made, like, oh, if I can't have this person, then I'll never date again. Those are inner vows that we don't realize that we're doing, but they really do carry power. So I had to learn that. So something that helped me with moving forward was creating a vision. And that's why I'm so passionate about what I do in my business with creating a vision board and teaching people how to work that out for themselves. I don't tell you what to do. I just help you. God has a vision for our lives. He has a plan for us. And so if we're stuck in the past, if we're allowing these thoughts to relive in our mind, we're not going to be living our lives. But a way to help live a life that is meaningful and full of purpose is creating the vision, writing the vision and making it plain. And again, that's why I love what I do, because I meet up quarterly with women to help them create a vision. And I will tell you, so many women that I've worked with, they execute immediately. It's amazing to me what happens in these events and how it just ignites something in them. And so to me, it's beautiful, because again, I know what it feels like to be in that place of stagnation, in that place of just holding on to toxic things instead of releasing to allow to receive the goodness of the Lord. So that's all the time I have for today, and I hope that this blessed someone. Thank you so much for joining me this week, and I hope you have a blessed day. Thank Thank you so much for joining in on this week's podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to subscribe, comment, and share with your family, friends, and your community. And make sure to join me every Thursday for a brand new episode. Take care.